Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. And if you've heard me talk before, one of my favorite ways to start a business is doing that at the same time as you're already continuing to receive an income. So, my guest today, Ryan, had that experience of working nights, weekends, and using even PTO to start working on a business that he was already involved in and getting it going. And so, we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but we also want to start with $500 starting a business. What does that even mean for you, Ryan? How did you get started with just $500 while you were in college?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Zach. I appreciate it. Kind of
Absolutely.
I always say my origin story. I mean, you can trace it back to shooting videos of my friends when I was young, but I always say I started my business in the first year with about a $500 camera.
Yep.
And in that first year, I worked at Target at the time in electronics. I was in college and bought
Okay.
a Canon T5, not even the T5i with the fancy flip screen. It was just the regular one, and bought that on my discount for my employee discount for about $500. And in that first
Yeah.
year, ended up taking that camera and shooting a bunch of small projects here and there around campus and in the area, and ended up making about $10,000 with it in that first year. And I was still, full-time student, had a social life, was working part-time.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what opened my eyes to the power of video and kind of the trend of where it was going. I'm like, well, wow, if I did this full time, I wonder what could be possible. So that's always kind of my fun origin story. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, how did you make that determination that there was a market or a need for this? Did you have people approaching you to just ask, or were you putting out some content to show kind of the work you were doing? How did that come about that people were finding out and actually paying you to do something for them?
sure, yeah. So I mean, there's kind of both. I would say the natural demand for it's there. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
needs videos of everything, whether it's like church services, weddings, business
Hmm.
promotions, literally anything you could think of. Everybody needs video for it. So there was that
Yeah.
piece, and then just I feel like it's one of those things like. Well, I guess I'm kind of biased towards it, but everybody knows a guy that sells insurance. Everybody knows somebody that sells houses. It's like anybody in my network that
Yep.
needed video, they're like, "Oh, well, Ryan can do that for me." So that was kind
Okay.
of the thing that got me out into the wild with it and trying to try things out that way.
So you had been able to demonstrate your skill set, and others were aware of that skill set and started to reach out. And I imagine from there, you started to get people referred to you from others. Is that kind of how that natural increase in business occurred, or how did your business then start to continue to grow?
Sure, yeah. So kind of my story was I started the business in college, just kind of a side
Yeah.
hustle thing here and there. And then after I graduated, I ended up working for a marketing firm for about 4 years or
Okay.
so. And while I was doing that, I was moonlighting, doing nights and weekends just when video projects came up. But I kind of got to a head in 2020, 2021, 2020, 2021, somewhere around there,
Yep.
where I was working, my full 8-hour day, and then I just was putting in like 4 to 5 hours every night, all weekend, all nights. I was taking PTO to go do shoots because I just
Right.
didn't have time to do it. So it's kind of coming to a natural head. So that was kind of the point when I knew I could go off and do it full time and be, I shouldn't say comfortable, but it was a lot less of a jump off the cliff than it would have been if I'd have just jumped off and done it without it having any customer base existing already. So
Yeah. Yep. And I did preemptively state that it's one of my favorite ways that I see people starting a business is doing something that they can do on the side as a side hustle and start to gain an income while they're still receiving an income so that it's not all dependent on this new activity that they're engaged in. It's not
mhm.
always going to work that way because not all businesses can be started in that manner, but I do find that there's a lot of value when you are able to take something you're interested in and have energy and passion behind and get that going like you did.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that and having proof of concept's huge for any
Yeah.
business owner, right? It's like, oh, I want to start the Uber of fill in the blank. And it's like, well, now I
Yep.
need seed money and I need 100 employees and I need all these things. And it's like, is that even what the market would pay for? So I think that's a
Right.
huge thing that people need to think about is like, if you're doing a service-based business, even if you're doing something normal like carpentry, plumbing, being a dentist or whatever, it's like maybe go work for a dentist for a couple of years to figure
Yep.
out all the odds and ends before you just leave dental school and launch a business and take a bunch of risk. I'm very risk averse in that way. So
Yeah.
it was natural, like having something lined up that is at least desirable and an in demand product or service that somebody would has paid you for and will continue to pay you for if you wanted to go off and do it full time. So
Yeah, absolutely. Now, doing something like that on the side does have its constraints. When you did start and doing this full time, what was the even a percentage or multiple that you experienced on growth during that first year?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, the amount of time I got back to actually put
Mhm.
into the business by doing it full time, you just don't even realize how much growth you can have there. I
Yeah.
wanted to say like the year that I went full time, revenues increased by at least 150% just because I had so
Wow.
much more time
Yeah.
to put into the business and stuff like that. Granted, expenses have gone up as time's
Sure.
gone on. Now I was working from home and just now I'm in a commercial studio space and in a podcast
Yep.
studio and an office space. So things kind of grow that way. But I always like to call it slow growth. It's like that's the best way to build a business that'll stand the test is like
Yeah.
slow growth, calculated risk as things kind of move along. Then you can prepare for some things rather than just taking a ton of risk. But I think it's also based on your risk profile as a person. If you're
Yep.
somebody that just goes to the blackjack table and puts it all on, it's like let's just see what happens. Like that's not me. I'm definitely
Right.
slow growth is focus there.
Yeah. Yep. I think there is a reason why some percentage of businesses, a large percentage of businesses, fail within the first 2 years, and then even higher percentage within that first 5 to 7 years. And some of that does have to do with risk and not really calculating what it is that you're putting out there in the market and what that need is. So you're taking a little more of a structured, risk averse approach, but also testing the waters as you continue to grow and expand. With that being said, have you identified areas that you have then launched in new service and in is part of your services offered?
Sure, yeah. So I would say like the core business that I work with is more like corporate fitness type
Yeah.
clients that want commercial video production. But
Yep.
there's, as we can talk about too, there's all these other verticals of revenue streams that I have for the business outside of just scripting, shooting, and editing videos. That's kind of the
Yeah.
bread and butter of what we do. But there's all this other stuff that happens. So with the new studio that I just acquired, like I mentioned, podcasting has had this huge resurgence. Kind of meta. I'm talking
Mhm.
about podcasting on a podcast, but there's this huge resurgence of having in an actual studio that people can come in, sit down and stuff like that. So right before this call, I was just on a shooting a remote podcast for a client at their place, but I
Yep.
also have a studio now that people can rent out. They can also have camera operators and access to our gear. We can do done for you editing. That was not something that I previously offered before. And then
Yeah.
outside of just the actual like Snod Media Group production stuff, I also have other things that I do online. So I guess you could say I'm an online influencer, if you will. I have an
Sure.
online presence with my YouTube channel, Facebook group, all these different things.
Yeah.
And throughout the years, I've started selling online digital products like online courses, let packs, email templates, a bunch of stuff like that, just to try to
Mhm.
maximize and just give back to the audience as much as I can. So there's a lot of different things that I'm doing online as well as in person, but those are kind of the overview of what it all looks like. So
Yeah. No, I'm interested in hearing about that Facebook group. You said that you have an online presence and a community that you've created. Talk a little bit more about that and how many people are actually now in that group.
sure, yeah. So probably in 2013, 2014, I was
Wow.
in scanning all the Facebook groups looking for good Facebook groups to join as a videographer because I was kind of
Right.
early on in my career. I just wanted to connect with more people. And there was like this overarching, like, it was a bunch of old grumpy men that had been in the business for 20 plus years that were
Sure.
really upset with younger people for asking questions and wanting to
Mhm.
get into the space because they just didn't like the newcomers. So after
Okay.
being in like 4 or 5 groups, I'm like, I'm just going to start my own group and really try to focus it towards business and like helping people with sales and marketing and just being a good resource. So started the group then. And now we have over 94,000 members in the group. I have 10 moderators that help me run the group,
Yeah.
and it's the largest videography Facebook group in the world, which is pretty cool. So we get probably 200 to 400 new members a day request to join.
Wow. Okay.
But we have to kind of sift into getting this big. Now we have so many
Sure.
Asian bots that come in that
Okay.
we have ask questions and they say, okay, admin to every question and all
Mhm.
these different things. So you have to kind of sift through a little bit, but that's been a really great place, not only just to like build an audience from scratch and like learn and actually do the
Yep.
marketing strategies that I encourage my clients to do, like actually put the boots on the ground and do the work. But then also as a feeder funnel for all my online programs that I sell, all my other things that I do, free education things, my YouTube channel and other things that I can kind of cross pollinate and cross promote. And I'm a
Yep.
huge fan of diversification with social media presence. I know a lot of people that have a huge fill in the blank following, like Facebook group or huge
Hmm.
YouTube channel, if for some reason, and we've seen this a lot with TikTok recently, they've just been banning accounts for no reason. And
Yeah.
you can't put all your eggs in one basket in that way, similar to how I've diversified revenue streams. So if people all of a sudden decided they didn't want videos done, or we have a pandemic that makes it we can't see each
Yeah.
other, there's other ways that we're making money. Same practice and same method with social media. It's like you need
Yeah.
to have a presence on all of them. You don't have to be kind of like Gary Vee always says, putting out 4 pieces of content a day on each platform. Like if you don't have a team, that's not sustainable, but being at least present on them and trying to kind of take a little chunk at a time to grow your following on all the different platforms is really important there.
Yeah. So diversification across social media platforms is similar to that diversification of income streams. So you're increasing your presence and making yourself increasingly known, but also then establishes some opportunities for individuals to see your work and for them to interrelate with one another. But getting yourself out there is one of those areas that are key. Now, there are people who are a little more averse to social media only because that's either unfamiliar, unknown, or they've seen negative connotations associated with social media. What is your current take on social media as it relates to just business in general? As it there are businesses maybe that I think that could value or get value and benefit from having a presence on social media, but maybe don't currently utilize it. But I'm just curious about your take on social media for businesses, and then even as it relates more specifically to your area, video marketing of businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really biased, but
Sure.
gosh, everybody needs to be on social media. Like if you think about even, 30, 40 years ago, there was so limited ways to get in contact with the masses. You'd have to
Yep.
take out an ad in the yellow pages, run television ads, you'd have to have billboard, like you have to pay a bunch of upfront money, which really gated attention, right? It's like only
Yep.
large companies like Coca-Cola could buy advertising. Now, the little guy can have a voice, and I think you're just crazy if you still aren't on this like, "Oh, we're not really on social media. We don't need to do it. We get
Yep.
word of mouth marketing, that type of thing." And hey, take advantage of all that stuff while you can, but you owe it to yourself to at least have a presence. I've had that plenty of times where companies will reach out to me and they'll say, "Hey, we need marketing done." And I see you actually take marketing serious with your own personal brand, and like you're
Yeah.
doing the things that we want to do, and you've gotten the success that we want to get. Like you're walking the walk. Like that's really what it comes down to. So obviously that helps me just to walk the walk. But like I said earlier, I love being the guinea pig. I always say,
Yeah.
"Hey, you guys should really be focusing on Instagram Reels." And they're like, "Well, blah blah blah." So then I focused on Instagram Reels for 2 months, grew my account by 700%. And they're like, "Holy cow, like you've been doing some great stuff. We should do that too." I'm like, "Yeah, we should." So some of those things you can practice what you preach, but I'm a huge advocate for just being present. And I would say like for those folks out there that are like, "Well, this is a huge waste of time in terms of
Yep.
like my day to put on social media." I always say like start with the one platform that you know your audience is on. So if there are
Yeah.
people that are listening to this on LinkedIn or they're watching it on social media or wherever, if you're a B2B business, like LinkedIn might be the platform. Just focus on one. And every week, just try to put one post out there. And then once you get in a rhythm, it's like, okay, maybe I could do every other day or 3 times a week or something like that. And then you can kind of evolve that process a little bit further. That's what I would encourage people to do is like find the one platform that you know your audience hangs out on and then kind of reverse engineer how can I be present there? How can I at least be showing up for people there?
Yep. Yes, and establish a routine that's sustainable. Like you said earlier, Gary Vee may be recommending 4 posts a day across multiple social media platforms, and that's not sustainable for most people. So starting with that one platform once a week, and then building from there, building out those routines and habits. Well,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, even the small guy, like you said, they're going to have a better presence and better return on their investment of time. Really, social media doesn't have to have a cost, and so if you can take that time to just have that initial presence and additional presence, because you know your competitors are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think another practice we can do as well as now iPhones, if people are on iPhone, you can do phone audits of screen time, which is such a really fun
Uh-huh.
thing to dig into. I
Yep.
have personal like apps that block, like for specifically TikTok. I will not do more than 60 minutes a day on there, whether that's
Yeah.
I'll do research on there for clients. I'm also just browsing for my own interest, but then posting on there as well. So I would
Yep.
encourage folks to like put limits on if you're on social media, like you're not just scrolling around, like you're engaging with posts that are in your niche. You're looking up, your competitors or your potential customers, and you're engaging with them. You're making a post, like get in, get out. That's what I always say. And then
Yeah.
try to shift your mindset from being a consumer to a producer. So
Yes.
don't look at it as, you're going to the restaurant to pig out at the buffet, because that's what a lot of people do in terms of content. You're just mindlessly
Right.
scrolling. You're going there to cook some food, put it on the serving tray, and then get the heck out of that restaurant. So you're not tempted to go and just binge all the food in the buffet. You want to try to just be there,
Yes.
produce, give things that are important to people, and then get out. That's my biggest advice there.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that advice. I think there are a lot of people who just consume content online there, or they consume content, video instruction, they consume knowledge, but they don't apply it. And if you're not applying it, you're not making progress. And so in this case, if you're not actually creating or producing content, you're not changing your presence in those platforms. You're just another person who's consuming the content of others. You can be putting that out there. So I appreciate that. Now, when you are asked by anyone what your biggest tip is for a new entrepreneur, what would you tell someone? One big tip to give somebody that is just starting off in business and wants to hopefully be successful, and they're seeing you at your point at which you're at now, and they're saying, "Okay, how can I get there?" May not be the same type of business, but how can I also achieve success?
That's a great question. I think my biggest tip that I give people that reach out to me is like, if you have an interest or in a business, let's say that you want to start,
Yeah,
never chase the money. If you want to start a business from scratch, you have to have a passion for whatever it is you're doing. I mean, I've plenty of
yeah,
people that reach out to me that say, "Hey, I want to get into real estate. I want to get into stock trading. I want to do XYZ insurance or whatever." And I'm like, "Do you even have an interest in that?" I'm like, "Well, no, I just know a lot of people that make a lot of money in it." I'm like, you will never be fulfilled in life. And that's like
yeah,
very woo woo type stuff. But I always say, if you're going to start a business, do something that you love, something you're passionate
yep,
about. And if the actual like execution of that service or product isn't the passion, you can always tie it back to something that you're passionate about. It's like, okay, we're making t-shirts. Okay, we're making a t-shirt company, but we're making them specifically for weightlifters, and I love weightlifting, so that's like we're providing clothing for these. Like you can find a way to
yes,
tie it into your passions, right? So for
yes,
me, I was very passionate about marketing, not even so much like production of video, which a lot of people are surprised about.
mhm,
um, I'm competent, I'm pretty good at it. If I'm not to toot my own horn, but that's not the thing that I love to do. Like when I start to hire people out in my business in the next 2 to 3 years, it will be for the production of video, so then I can focus on marketing strategy, helping businesses, and really educating people about marketing, because that's what I love to do, is helping people
yep,
with that stuff. So it takes a little bit of self-knowledge and like self-work on like, what do I actually like? What do I want to do? But I would say do something that you love first, and something that you find passion with, that you're going to put the time in late at night, not solely for a huge paycheck or something, but that you actually see
yeah,
an impact in the world that you're proud of.
yeah. And every time I've tried to do something that was just chasing money, as you described, none of it has ever worked out very well. So
Right.
it
Right.
absolutely resonates with me. When I pursued something that I was more passionate about, I've had the most success that I've ever had. So I think you're right on with that. And same with people who have an interest in starting a YouTube channel, or putting out, producing content. If they're not going to be doing something that they actually are passionate about and enjoy doing, they're not going to keep it up. And if they're not doing it just because they think they're going to make money, they're probably not going to make money at it either. That's always what I've heard as well.
Right. It's kind of ironic. Like the world literally forces you to just do the thing that you're meant to do.
Yeah.
Do the thing that
Right.
you're put on this world to do, or that you're going to find the most value from. And there's always the downside of just chasing the money side. I mean, especially with
Yeah.
investments or business opportunities, if it's not, you can be passionate about making money, but do you want to do fill in the blank to get
Yep.
there?
Yeah. Well, what is your biggest lesson learned and working on starting your business and building it and scaling it and continuing it today?
Sure, sure. I would say for me, it comes from not just following industry trends, making
Yep.
small changes and learning things from other industries that you can apply to make yours better. So, a good example is the pricing model in video production. As long as it's been around, everyone does a day
Hmm.
rate. There's a flat rate price for a project, and it's very like a dated process, I would say. So, the
Sure.
biggest change that I've done is doing value based pricing and project retainers for clients. So
Okay.
pricing a video project, not just based on the hours that's going to go into it, because you can't scale very well if if you're shooting a video for Coca-Cola that's going to be on a Super Bowl commercial versus
Yeah.
a nonprofit that has no budget, like those are two very different clients. So pricing the deliverables and the strategy based on the value to the client has been a huge thing for me that I would say is a differentiator, but kind of a new thing that I've taken into it. So trying to apply those things has been really helpful. And then, like I said, learning from other industries. So seeing what Netflix is a subscription-based service that they're getting recurring revenue every month. Looking at other service-based people that are like high-end consultants that, okay, 1 hour of their time is worth $20,000. It's like, well, what validates that, or what warrants that price tag?
Yeah.
So learning from other industries on the pricing side. And then also, like I mentioned, having those key differentiators very clearly lined out for people. So when I hop on calls with people, it's like, hey, here's what you're going to find in the whole like market of video production. There's a kid in college that doesn't know very much. There's large scale video production agencies that are going to charge you hundreds of thousands. Here's where my company sits, and here's how we're different. Here's who we are, and here's who we're not. So I think really knowing yourself, knowing your service and your product and where you fall, you don't leave it up to question for your clients to be like, well, they're trying to make all these decisions of like, well, where does Ryan's company fall with this other company I'm talking to? Like, just line it out for them. Hey, here's where we sit. Here's what you're going to get if you buy this or pay for this. Here's what you're going to get if you go with them. I could care, and I shouldn't say I should care less, but I want you to pick the right choice for you. And if it's not me, that's okay, as long as you know where we're different and where we can help you. So,
yeah, those are a great lessons learned. Knowing your value and how you can then relate it to the customer, and also that values-based pricing, I think is something when you look at what has been in place in that industry in which you work, it doesn't need to continue to be the same outdated process. And I really like that consideration of if you're looking at a large conglomerate that you're doing a product for versus the nonprofits, and have that ability to make that differentiation and price consideration of the value that's added for both. And also just that looking at your competition, and also not just your competition, but those that are doing the great work they're doing in other fields, like the consultants that are charging $20,000 an hour, like you're saying. I think there's an need for individuals to really step back and take a moment to consider what they are doing and how that relates to what others are doing and doing successfully, and how they can continue to grow and build upon that. Now, my $1 million question I like to ask all of my guests: if you were to be handed $1 million today, no restraints or no restrictions on that, what would you do with that, and why?
Sure. You asked me this question before the call, and I actually thought about it a little bit yesterday, and it speaks a little bit to my tendencies. But I would say I would probably put 100 to 200,000 of it into more camera gear, just to increase production value. But the rest of it, I would seriously look at investing in other things that would grow over time. So whether that's buying an actual commercial property that the business could sit in, and then renting out the other units, doing something like that to kind of make the business grow. I'm only 28, so I know I have time on my side, so I would want to kind of maximize that stuff. But I would say, other than that, I would probably want to hire at least one, if not two, full-time in-house creatives to do all my editing, be primary shooters, and then I could kind of step out of the production roles and start, working more as a producer, business owner, and just kind of managing people. That would probably be what I would spend the money on, and then maybe a little bit of fun for like we said, getting some cool things like extra cameras and stuff like that to increase production and kind of nerd out a little bit with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's nice you actually have some vision for how you could utilize those, not just with and put it in some investments, right? Invested in investments. You actually have given some thought to that and consideration. So you can see that as you grow, your vision will continue to be carried out and carried forward. So Brian, if individuals want to reach out to you, what's the best way for someone to connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. Probably the best place is on my website. So ryansnaad.com. It's RYANSNAADT. And then all my stuff's on there in terms of like courses, my video production business, any other info about me or fun tidbits, or you can probably find there. So.
All right. And if somebody wants to see some examples of the work you're doing, they could also find it on your website?
Yep. So if they want to learn more about my production company, it's snaadmedia.com. So SNAADT media.com. ryanryan.com, and all the fun stuff's there. I know, Zach,
Perfect.
you mentioned you were looking at a couple different productions that we did, which are always fun to kind of see what people are up to. So
Absolutely, absolutely, and I wanted to say that you do excellent work. Just the brief time I was able to take to look at some of the work you guys do. So I I'd hire you.
awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Of course, of course. Well, thank you for being a guest today and just sharing some of your experiences. I took some notes. You provided some additional enlightenment for me as well. So thank you, Ryan.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Zach.
Yeah, of course. And I look forward to just seeing where things go from here.